Hello, thank you so much for joining us this afternoon. I hope you're enjoying your day here at the Watershed Conference. My name is Pat Heaney. I'm the Assistant Director of Education at the Watershed Institute. And this afternoon, I'm delighted to introduce the speakers for this session on engaging students in regional studies of watersheds. And our speakers, we have with us Davis Bush, who is the StreamWatch Schools coordinator at the Watershed Institute, Jeff Hoagland, who is the Director of Education at the Watershed Institute. We have Lauren Madden, who is a professor of elementary science education right here at TCNJ. Her office is somewhere in one of these buildings. And also Roberta Hunter. Dr. Hunter is with New Jersey Audubon as the education program manager. We are going to ask that you save questions to the end, and I'll take questions both from the audience and those people who are watching via Zoom. So I think we're all set. Thank you all. And I'm introducing Roberta first.
Or not. There we go. Thanks to all our sponsors that make the event possible. This is my first Watershed conference, and it's pretty cool. So I'm going to, I guess we have another housekeeping slide.
You're gonna go through. Oh, I'm sorry. You want me to come back up?
No, I can do it.
Okay.
So just in person, just be polite, silence your devices, and speak loudly and clearly so that we can hear you and we can share it with the Zoom presenters. And those of you that are with us on Zoom, just use the Q&A function to ask questions and reach out to Pri if you're having an issue. This program is being recorded and will be available in the conference app. There we are again, look. All right, so I'm gonna kick us off a little bit with talking about what is place, right? We're talking about regional watershed management, regional education, but we have to understand what place is and what place-based education is and how it is beneficial to learning and teaching. So we'll start off with that. And at the very center of all that is what is place, right? It's a noun that we use interchangeably for many different reasons, but we're going to talk about it in this way. And that is, place is a physical space that has meaning, right? And that meaning can be personal, it can be social, it can be cultural, it can be all three, and often is. So I want you to think, close your eyes, and just for a moment, think about a physical space that has meaning for you. All right. And I want you to keep that place in mind as we go through this presentation and we talk about its value. And so I decided to use a place that is special to me that's nearby, the Stony Brook at Johnson Park in Princeton. And that has social meaning to me because I was a naturalist in residence at the elementary school there, and I taught well over 1,200 students over my 11 years at the school. And so it really helped me teach it. It really helped me achieve a goal of connecting students to nature and helping them learn. It also has personal meaning because it was a site that my daughter and I would go to when she was young and catch macros and look for fish and catch toads. And invariably, she always somehow fell into the water. And so it has that meaning. It is someplace that I really identify with, that's important to how I see myself. It's someplace that I have emotional attachment to, and it was someplace that helped me reach my goals that I had. And I am sure if you think of that place that you imagined, you can see some of those connections as well. And it's that collection of traits that we call sense of place. Okay, so you have a sense of place, if it helps inform how you see yourself, your identity. If you have attachment to it, it's meaningful to you in different ways. Um, and that it helps you meet your goals. And that might be teaching elementary school students like it was at my place that I highlighted. It might be, it's great fishing. You like to go out on the boat there. It has some dependence. It could be an urban park that you go and have meet up basketball games, right? It's meeting some goal that you have. And sense of place is really variable in scale, right? It could be that section of the Stony Brook, but it can also be, a trail. It can be a neighborhood in a city. It could be a national park. Heck, it could be a state. I lived in Michigan for 4 years and really felt like I wasn't home because I have a strong sense of place for New Jersey. So because I have a sense of place, this Stony Brook State Park, it looks like a nice place, right? But I don't really have any attachment to it or meaning for it. It doesn't contribute to how I see myself, but this definitely does. This place on the Stony Brook is someplace that I learned about myself, about my students, about nature, about the ecosystem. It's someplace that I have great memories. And so I have that sense of place, and having a sense of place really supported my own learning about the place. So it's sort of foster and reiterative. So we can think about not just our own sense of place, but how we can explore that with our students. And when I say students, I work primarily with educators now. So I consider educators and K-12 students to be learners. So when we teach in a space like this, in a neighborhood, in a park, along the Stony Brook, at any of your in any of your watersheds, we can consider that as a part of place-based education, right? And place-based education it really leverages the unique parts of that place. It's not a generic activity that you can do anywhere, but it's something that relies on local heritage, cultures, landscapes, opportunities and experiences that you can have there that you can't necessarily have elsewhere. And using those as a foundation to teach across the curriculum, right? We're not talking about just science education, but mathematics, social studies, social emotional learning is big. And it can do two things, right? It can either leverage that sense of place that a learner already has, or it can develop a sense of place that a learner doesn't yet have, right? And we often sort of try to balance those depending on what we need. But having a sense of place in place-based education really can help support what we call 3H learning that has been documented to create transformative sustainability learning, right? Hands-on, heads-on, and hearts-on, where there's meaning, right? That it helps change our learning. So I'm going to share a few different examples of place-based education so that you get an idea of what the possibilities are. So the first one I'll briefly tell you about is teaching science outdoors, urban partnerships. This is the project that I worked on in Michigan, in which we supported urban elementary teachers in teaching science outdoors. And we took in a place-based way, right? So we practiced what we preached, and we really considered place when we were designing the professional development. So they were with us virtually for 4 sessions in the spring and then for a week in the summer. And for 3 days of that week, we chose an urban park in their city that was meaningful to the community. So for Detroit, we were on Belle Isle. If anybody's ever been to Detroit, it's a large island in the middle of the river. And it's hugely important to the Black community of Detroit, both socially, that's where you have the church picnics and the graduation parties and the birthday parties and the family reunions. But also culturally, it was the site of the Detroit Uprising in the 1930s. So there really was a lot of meaning that was very layered in the park. So we chose that as a place they were familiar with, that they cared about, to do that part of the PD. And then in the second, we took them to their schoolyards where they wanted to teach. And often teachers don't have a sense of place for their schoolyard. It's seen as either blank, it has negative perceptions, and really they go from their car to the building and the building to the car. So they don't have a sense of place. And so we try to do both of those, cultivation of sense of place and relying on sense of place to deepen learning. Now I work for New Jersey Audubon. One of our programs is a national program, which you wouldn't think would lend itself to sense of place, right? Because it is used across the country. But it's a national sustainability program for schools. And we're lucky enough to be the New Jersey affiliate. We're the only state that has staff on the ground to assist teachers in schools. And it has a collection of activities in 3 themes: biodiversity and nature, climate change, and healthy and resilient communities. And they are all very focused on identifying what is an issue in your school and community that you can work on to make your school and community more sustainable, and identifying what is there and building to create a solution. So it's very much focused on place-based education, even if it is a national program. And it helps students connect what's outside the school to what's inside the school, that community school bridge. Also, one of our programs, Resilience in Schools Consortium, has middle and high schools in coastal communities, Wildwood, Cape May, Atlantic City, Egg Harbor, take a deep dive into climate change and its impacts on their communities. And then they identify a project in their community that they can use to make the community where they live more resilient. So for example, one school interviewed business owners and community members about what it was like during Superstorm Sandy, right? Because that is way before their time, which blows my mind. And then they compared it to their experience with a severe storm the winter before. And in talking with members of the community, they realized that the Spanish speakers in the community weren't aware of resources to help prevent damage to their homes or to help repair damage to their homes. And so the class worked together to create a bilingual brochure highlighting both pre-storm and post-storm resources for homeowners and community members. So they really took advantage of their connection to their community, their connection to that place, and created some resilience in their community. So why is place-based education important? A few reasons. Care, whether it's for individuals, landscapes, communities, really can support learning and action. And care is something that is vital to our connection with place and with people. Value, this is something that is important to me. Place-based education, when teachers and educators really get to know that place, that community, the other lives of their students other than their life in the classroom, can help educators value that community and see it in an assets-oriented way that they didn't necessarily before. So not only are the students gaining from the place-based education, but the educators are as well. And practice, right? If you want to play a concerto, you don't sit down and play the whole thing, right? You start with notes and then you start with measures and you build. In the same way, place-based education that has connection to the student's community and to that place helps engage in smaller scale sustainability action. They see that as a success, and they have both experience and motivation to move to broader action at a higher level of the community. So it really gives them a chance to build skills and competence and confidence um, in becoming active citizens that we really need. So just a quick summary. Place-based education, right? It really leverages the unique qualities of a place and a community and its human and more than human parts. I focused a lot on the human parts of these places, but the more than human is just as important to support learning across content areas. And it can develop a sense of place in students and educators, or it can leverage that sense of place. It can help connect school staff with their students' communities and the more than human community outside of the school. And it provides real world experiences to support sustainability action. And I know we're waiting to take questions later, but I just wanted to give you my contact information. I'm in the app as well. And then I think Davis, you're next, right?
Am I using the clicker or am I using the?
I used them, but
Okay. All right. Hey, wow, great. I love conferences because you feel this, you better embrace this sense of humility because the building is full of a lot of commitment and a lot of expertise. So really glad to be here and share, I guess, what we have in that. My name is Jeff Hoagland. I'm the education director at the Watershed Institute. I'm here with Davis Bush, and Davis is going to do most of the talking. I wanted to provide a little bit of a backdrop about what he's going to talk about. We are at the Watershed Institute. Is this one right here? Nope. Aha. Where our mission is to keep water clean, healthy, and safe. That's probably, everybody's probably here embracing that in some way. It comes out of the mouth easily, but it's really not an easy task. We work to protect and restore water and natural environments in central New Jersey. There is such a place, if you didn't know that, through conservation, advocacy, science, and education. It's not working for me. What if I do?
you have to keep that on there.
Briefly, conservation, we have a 950 acre reserve that we are maintained and try to in place stewardship projects to keep the habitats natural and the water clean. We have an advocacy program. I don't see anybody here from that, so I'll be honest. I consider them, maybe all of us, the Lorax. The advocacy team goes and speaks on behalf of the environment because the environment doesn't speak for itself. Our science team, I could stand here all day and talk about what they do, but I think the thing that we've done the longest is put community volunteers out in waterways, testing water quality and collecting data. And the education program is working with a wide range of people, working primarily to look at environmental literacy and promote that among youth and adults. We're right up the road. If you look at the map on the right-hand side, I didn't time it. Maybe it took us 10 minutes to get here. We have some wonderful resources, 950 acre reserve. And we have a LEED Platinum certified Watershed Center. Both of those are part of the classroom that we typically use for an environmental education program. It's certainly not limited to that, but those are just wonderful resources to have. I mentioned environmental education, and this is a great follow-up to what Roberta was talking about. For 40 years, we've done most of our programming on that piece of property. And the idea that those of you who are in environmental education, we do this for several reasons. When we can, it's got the word education. We're doing education. We're trying to educate youth. I would argue that we're very much trying to inspire youth too. Roberta talked about the 3 H's, and I would put the heart up there with the other 2 H's. And we're trying to empower youth. This is the next generation. And I would say to anybody at this conference, you know, these are folks coming for your job. So that's our job, is to really empower them to take those reins. Programs have a lot of different looks. Some of our programs might be embedded more in the center, but with 950 acres, we like to do what we can outdoors. There's programs like Habitat Survivors. That's a program. Our school programs tend to be standards based. So Habitat Survivors, we're working with third graders and looking at adaptations of resident organisms. There's Stormwater Solutions, where fourth graders are actually doing engineering on a model to prevent or reduce stormwater impacts. Build a Better School, where we're looking at sustainability features of our building and other sustainability features, and students will then go and create their own improvements to their school. We also are celebrating this moment in the season. So that means this weekend, somebody, I don't know, somebody's doing some maple sugaring over at the Watershed. But at the end of the day, we find ourselves out at this location, a few miles upstream from where Roberta is talking about, on the Stony Brook. And for years, to be honest, for 40 years, I've been there with students, adults, teachers are my favorite students, working to understand what healthy water is, what a stream is, what is our connection to it, what is our impact on it, what is the exchange between the two of us, this body of water and ourselves. And it's great. A lot of light bulbs going on all the time. 30 years ago, those interactions with students gave birth to our StreamWatch program, which is the community volunteers who go out and test water. But we realize it's missing one component, and that's the place-based. You know, this is our place. This is the place that is really special to me. Students love field trips. They love going and visiting experts, but we're switching up our interaction with water to become more place-based. And we call that program StreamWatch Schools, and Davis Bush is in charge of that program, and I'm going to hand it off to you.
Thank you, Jeff. And thank all of you for being here. Very exciting to see so many people here. Okay. So I'll just get right into it. As Jeff was saying, StreamWatch Schools is a great way for us to make our stream programs a lot more place-based. It is a water quality monitoring program led by students, and it is part of the Watershed Institute's commitment to protecting New Jersey's waterways. And of course, we do our stream programs on site all the time, but the truth of the matter is we know what our water quality is like. We test it all the time. We do all these programs. But what might serve students better is if we go to them and they test a body of water that is close to them and that they're more familiar with. So that's what we're addressing with StreamWatch Schools. What does it mean to be a StreamWatch school? So we will be working we are working very closely with teachers, grade school teachers. So that's grades K through 12. Of course, it's going to be pretty different if we're doing this with a kindergarten group compared to a 12th grade group, but everyone can learn about water quality all together. So those teachers will learn about water quality. We'll help them learn about that. We'll help them learn about what that means. We will help them learn how to collect that data, the biological and the chemical parameters that we're looking for. And they will bring what they've learned back to their classroom, do those tests with their students at a school or at a stream that is close to their school, ideally. And then from there, they will upload that data to our central online platform. And that's one of the things that makes StreamWatch Schools so exciting is this sharing aspect, because that will really help them be connected to each other as students. So I just want to share really quickly some quotes from our pilot teachers. We call them that because they were some of the first people to get involved, and we're so grateful to them. Really quickly, I just want to highlight the top left quote from Shani Perret from the Petty School. She says, "It felt like the joy of science was obvious to them in a way that it hadn't been previously." And that made me so excited to hear her say that, because science should be joyful. You know, there is joy in learning about the natural world and your place in that and the environment. And it's easy to forget that in a standard classroom setting when you're working with papers all the time. So it should be joyful, and I'm glad that we're able to capture that with this program. So some of our goals are right here, but to sum it up in just a couple of words, the goals for this program are connection and community. We want these students to feel connected to the natural world, to their environment, their local environment, their watershed, if you will. And that is so important. That is so important because when these students get an affinity to the natural world from a young age, that is something that they will carry into adulthood with them. And that is so important because that's maybe something that's being lost a little bit, that affinity to nature. So having a program like this that is so hands-on that they can really like get immersed in the natural world, I think will be very, very, very beneficial. So I mentioned before that we are uploading the data to a central online platform. This is what it looks like. It is called Monitor My Watershed in collaboration with Stroud. And this is what it looks like. So you could see that there are various points here. So you would click on one of the pins. It would show you a location where data had been collected by one of our StreamWatch schools. And they can compare that data to their own data. And it really is a great opportunity for students to be able to draw connections between their school, their community, and other communities as well. And they will really get to ask questions about why the data is what it is. So as far as location, right now we are focused on the Millstone watershed and the Assunpink watershed. It's worth mentioning that these are by no means hard boundaries. We already are working with schools outside of these two watersheds, and of course, we're very, very happy to have them as well. But the Millstone watershed, of course, is where the Watershed Institute is located, so that's one of our focuses. And then I also want to really highlight the Assunpink watershed as well. So apart from the fact that the Assunpink watershed is also pretty close to the Watershed Institute, it is an excellent example of how we can demonstrate the difference between upstream and downstream. So if you look at the map, starting from the east, the Assunpink Creek kind of flows from east to west. And so somebody who collected data maybe at the edge of Monmouth County might look at their data, compare that data to the data from someone downstream or some of the schools downstream and think to themselves, it looks different. Or our water quality maybe looks like it's a little bit better. I wonder why that is. And that's the real question. Why is that? What is happening upstream that is causing that difference to be there? What are we doing to contribute to that? If you want to take it a step further, you could ask, what can we be doing differently to kind of close that gap in the future? And that's what StreamWatch Schools is about. So I also want to quickly run through what kind of data we're collecting with this program, because not only is it really important and cool data to collect and it tells us really cool things, but it's also fun. It's really fun for these students to collect. And that's important too, because, you know, if you're going to talk about, we want them to have a connection to nature, what better way is there to do that than to let them have fun in nature while they're doing this? So we have visual and habitat data, we have biological data, and we also have chemical data. Of course, it'll be different from grade level to grade level. First up, we have visual and habitat. So this is mostly observational stuff. What does the habitat look like using the 5 senses? What does it smell like? What do you notice about this habitat? With some of the younger groups, like maybe K through 2, this would also include some biological components as well. Who are these footprints from? Who is this feather from? Who did this, where did it come from? What animals and plants do you think might use this area? We also have biological data. So on this slide, I want to quickly highlight the leaf packs, and that it already is a big part of the program, but it will continue to be an even bigger part of the program because it is a really great way for schools to still be involved if they do not have safe and reliable access to a stream. It's a great way for us to be able to kind of bring the stream to them. They will still be able to study the biological components of that habitat, even if they cannot access a stream close by. So these are some of the creatures that we might be seeing. We'll mostly be studying the benthic macroinvertebrates in these habitats. And what we will explain to the students is, of course, some of these organisms are more sensitive to pollution than others. And so we'll kind of just go into that. We will study these organisms, we will find them. It'll be so fun for them to look at. And of course, we will talk about the fact that if there are lots of sensitive organisms present in the habitat, then that might mean something about the water quality. We can draw inferences based on that. Moving on to chemical data. So we do have some guidelines for the teachers in terms of what parameters we want them to test, such as salinity, nitrate concentration, phosphate concentration, dissolved oxygen. However, there is room for the teachers to decide for themselves what is going to be most valuable for their students. So for example, if they want to expand on the parameters that we have, maybe they want to look at biological oxygen demand, maybe they want to think about bacteria a little bit, we can definitely help them with that too. And once they have collected the chemical data, they will sort of be using it in something like this. So this is an example. Looking at this chart, they may ask themselves, well, why is our nitrate concentration a bit higher than we want it to be? These are the New Jersey standards. So why is it different? Why is our phosphate concentration higher than what we want it to be? What is happening locally for that to be the case? And what can we maybe be doing differently about that? These are the questions that students will be asking. And we also have the StreamWatch Schools forum. So going back to that sense of connection, this is so important as well to form this sort of community, because when you're a student, it can feel so isolating, like you're isolated to your own school or to your own school district. And that can actually be very harmful because they need to be able to feel that connection. They need to feel that they're all in this together. In the same way that we in this room and at this conference are in this together, they need to feel that too. We need them to be feeling that. And so we have our StreamWatch Schools forum as an opportunity at the end of the school year for them to share the stories that they were able to make based on the data that they collected. So thank you all for listening. We're going to save questions to the end. The QR code here takes you to the website if you want more information on StreamWatch Schools, or you can talk to me after. I have brochures. Yeah, you can talk to me after. Thank you so much for listening. I'm not going to take any more time.
Hi, everybody. Oh, I'm the short one. Hi, everybody. All right, so I'm Lauren Madden. We met earlier this week on Zoom and talked a little bit about what we were going to discuss for our slides before we have a panel discussion. And I was really, really glad that Roberta talked about place, because that's going to inform a little bit about what I talk about and the work that happens at the Watershed, which is also super important. I kind of want to say, I love the idea of the sense of place, and a sense of place that a person can develop can really imprint on you. So I grew up on Long Island. I haven't lived there in 25 years. If someone says Mariah Carey or Natalie Portman in my presence, inside my head, I go, from Long Island, she's from Long Island, she's from Long Island, right? So there's things about you like that just stay with you right now. And I have to say that the place that I'm going to focus on in some of the talk today is the place of New Jersey. And I want to recognize some incredibly special and unique things that are going on right now in terms of our climate education policy, because it's not just trailblazing, it's monumental, and we are only the second place on earth to do what we're doing. So I'll kind of give you a little sense of that in a minute. All right, so where do I fit in? Here at TCNJ, we have a minor in environmental sustainability education. We are the only place in New Jersey that has a North American Association for Environmental Education accredited minor. We are one of only 12 on the continent who have this distinction. So we've really put a lot of effort into making sure what we're doing to shape environmental education here at TCNJ is really targeted towards pre-service classroom teachers. Some of the very best environmental education there is happens outside the classroom with folks like Audubon and the Watershed Institute. But the bulk of the learning that happens for kids in their lives is in K-12 classrooms. And we wanted to design something that helped make some really good through lines and connections to what happens in some other places. So we launched 10 years ago. That feels enormously large of a period of time, but we're really thrilled about that program. So I've been doing a lot of research in this area too. Project C is a grant that is officially ending the end of this month. We've got a no-cost extension to get some data analyzed. That was something that really, it was in partnership with Save Barnegat Bay. And what we did was worked with groups of teachers, about a total of 100 teachers from across the state, pre-service and practicing teachers. Came to a series of 3 workshops. 2 of them were outdoors at the spectacular Save Barnegat Bay Eco Center in Toms River, and one of them was here at TCNJ. One of the amazing things about that work that focused on place in both places was they sort of saw a purpose for both places. So we learned a lot about how to explore the world around us in our coastal ecosystems. And then we learned a little bit here about what does that look like in an institute of higher education. And we let K-12 teachers take samples and look at them under our scanning electron microscope, which is really a very fun toy, and something that we're really, really lucky to have access to here at TCNJ, but lots of really interesting senses of where we are and what we're doing kind of came together there. At the beginning of that work, we surveyed teachers about their understanding of both climate change and marine science. Those are the 2 ideas we were kind of getting at. Kind of weird that most science textbooks, when we talk about life science or earth science, all of the examples are terrestrial when 2/3 of Earth is water. That's strange, right? Like, and even so, all the textbooks come from California. So we read a lot about armadillos, and that's not really something we have a lot of access to here on the East Coast. But this is, I should say, just to kind of celebrate a little bit, some of the teachers we work with here is Grace Ann features in one of my pictures here, looking at some watershed maps with a group of teachers. These were pre-K to 2 teachers who did amazing work. And then on the right-hand side, you will see a photo from a theatrical production in Trenton, New Jersey. A team of bilingual 1st grade teachers took a lesson we did about osprey migration and wrote a play called Fly, Osprey, Fly. The 1st graders made their own costumes. They talked about the impacts of climate change on the way in which osprey are migrating. It was completely bilingual. All of the sets, costumes, and music were done by 1st graders. It was incredible. I'm so grateful I had a chance to go and be part of this. And I just want to thank and acknowledge how incredible the teachers are we've had a chance to work with, because this is just one thing. And there were 20 other projects that were like this that just sort of came about because these teachers were amazing. All right, so talking a lot, listening a lot to Senator Smith and to Director Commissioner Watershed. We're hearing about a lot of places where things just sort of don't line up, right? And how sometimes we have the best of intentions where we want to change things, but we're not looking at the whole picture systemically. To use the stream analogy from earlier, this piece of legislation right here, the fact that it's the rules to teach about climate change from K through 12, that takes this whole problem upstream. We will not be voters and decision makers until we are already students, right? Everyone who walks into a voting booth has spent time in a K-12 classroom at some point. We have made this monumental decision that we are going to start talking about climate and start talking about why that matters and why that matters specifically here in New Jersey with kids as young as kindergarten. That's remarkable. And when we think about places on Earth that we think of for great environmental education, we think about Germany, right? Canada, Finland, Australia, Singapore. These are the places that come to mind. They all think you need to be in middle school before you talk about climate change. So even in the places doing the best of the best work, it's not happening. Italy is the only other place on Earth that is talking about climate change with young kids. They get 42 hours of climate instruction every year starting in kindergarten. So we are literally the 2nd place on the planet who have made a decision to actually take kids seriously. I want to let that sink in for a minute. All right. Like that's some serious stuff. We have decided, and I think I sort of wanted to stand up and say, but we already are doing the most important possible thing we can do for future decision making. We're talking to kids when they're young, when they're actually able to make connections across disparate ideas. We're doing a really good job, guys. All right. So with all that said, I'm not just saying that, right? The research suggests this. There's a study that came out in 2021 that it was a predictive study. It was a statistical study. It was not necessarily something that was collecting data on actual students. However, this is really promising. If 16% of high school students in middle and high income countries, 16%, so we are talking about a small number, right? Had education about climate change just in high school. So small number and only in high school. We would look at huge reductions in carbon emissions to the tune of 20 gigatons. And I know for a lot of people who are not scientists, that sounds like 57 bleezelblorps, right? Like that number is hard to picture. It fits right below widespread rooftop solar. So if we're talking about educating this tiny fraction of a small amount of kids, we're looking at the same kind of impact as widespread rooftop solar. That's remarkable. We've decided everybody from age 5 on is going to learn about this. Where's that going to fit on this chart? It's pretty incredible, right? Okay. You can tell I'm excited. So in advance of these standards coming out, I was a little nervous because I was here when the next gen science standards roll out, and there was not a lot of support for teachers in schools when that happened, and it didn't happen super effectively. So I did a study in partnership with Barnegat Bay, excuse me, love Save Barnegat Bay, but this one was with Subject to Climate, surveying teachers' preparedness to adopt these standards. We found that it was a small study, but it was statewide. Most wanted more access to curricular materials, and 75% wanted more professional development opportunities. So good to know. So starting last year, or starting last semester, I should say, I've been leading a statewide study where we're going to visit 63 classrooms across the state. We're about halfway done. Every single county, we're going to one elementary school, one middle school, and one high school to see what climate change education looks like in these classrooms. So we're about at the 30 point right now. So we're halfway there. We've had 4 observers. It's not just me, thank goodness. We've done 27 observations. I should say as of today, it's 29 observations, and several more are scheduled. We've seen 18 of the 21 counties. We've visited 5 elementary schools, 11 middle schools, and 9 high schools so far. One of the things that I think is so refreshing is that we're not just seeing science. We've seen a lot of science, but we've seen technology, we've seen CS and coding, we've seen phys ed. Phys ed teachers are doing amazing things right now. I saw you had Tina Overman as one of the people you quoted before. Suzanne Horsley, who's one of her colleagues in phys ed, is just knocking it out of the park. She's been incredible. A lot of social studies, writing, Spanish, a lot of Spanish. It's been incredible. We've been to 2 AP Spanish classes so far, art and STEAM. So what's it looking like? In short, it is phenomenal. Now, you are not going to invite some lady funded by the state who works in a school of education to come to your classroom unless you're pretty confident in your teaching, right? Like, let's be clear. We know that there's going to be a skew, and it's going to be skewed in a certain direction. However, the place we haven't seen a skew that I think is really, really wonderful is that it is not all high-income schools that have contacted us. We've been in Trenton, we've been in Camden, we have seen schools with all kinds of kids, lots of English language learners, lots of kids with special needs. All kinds of teachers and all kinds of schools have invited us in. Again, these are the teacher of the year types. They are absolutely wonderful superstar teachers. But they're not just in a certain kind of school. And I think it's important to recognize that. And I also think when we're reporting back to the state, we need to tell them this is what's possible, right? And we know it's possible, and we know it's happening everywhere. So how are we going to make sure everybody gets the tools to get from where they are right now to where these superstars are? Those are the marching orders. We've seen lessons on things like benefits and drawbacks of global change, the ways artists share sustainability through their work. comparisons between ecosystems in New Jersey and the Galapagos Islands. We've seen like really, really cool stuff. And another thing we're learning that I really hope we get to tell the state about is that these teachers who are teaching about climate, especially those outside of science classrooms, are making connections to community organizations all the time on their own. People like me in schools of education need to do a better job helping teachers make those connections so that they feel comfortable doing that and letting that happen more frequently. These teachers are doing a tremendous amount of self-learning. They are mentioning podcasts and documentaries and books and journal articles. And is it okay if I tell you I listen to NPR every day just in case there's a good climate story? Yes, we're hearing it all the time. But I think that's part of the message we have to send back to the state too, is that the ones who are superstars, the ones who are doing all of this are taking their own time and their own dime to make this happen. And what are we doing to recognize that and give them credit for it? Because I think they deserve it. A sad piece here, despite the fact that these teachers are amazing. And again, teachers of the year, we had a Millikan educator. We had a lot of really, really superstars. Of the 30 or so observations we've done, only 3 times did an administrator come down to introduce themselves or welcome us to their school. 10%. Now, I understand there's a lot going on in these buildings and there's all kinds of moving parts in schools, but we're going to need a lot of administrator support if we want to find a way to get teachers credit for doing self-learning, right? So we're going to need to work on that. And that's a part of the puzzle we've got to get to. The other piece I think that's a little surprising that I'd like to dig into a little bit more deeply is we haven't seen any math lessons at all. We've seen pretty much every subject area except math. Again, we've got the other half to do. Maybe we will see some math. But I wonder where that's going to fit in. And also just thinking about how all the proportional reasoning we're going to need to understand how to unpack these problems. What are we doing in our math classrooms? And what are we doing to help math teachers? What instructions are we giving them? What tools are we giving them? What strategies are we giving them that we have to sort of figure out? So this is definitely a work in progress and it's really at the beginning. But when they said, what do you want to talk about with watersheds in schools? I said, well, I kind of want to talk about the whole state. But all that said, I hope that's helpful. And I think that's all my slides. Yes. Oh, next step. So we're trying to recruit more teachers, especially far north and far south in the state. Central Jersey does exist because Central Jersey teachers showed up hard and fast to fill out our surveys and get those observations. Mercer, Middlesex, Hunterdon, Burlington, we got those counties covered. But far north and far south, we really, really need recruitment. And please feel free to contact me if you are interested and I could send you more information. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for having me.
Yay.
Thank you all very much. That was excellent, very exciting. You know, it's educators when they're excited and great stuff. So we're going to take questions. The first question came in from one of our Zoom people. And this is for Davis. And so, yeah, that mic, it doesn't broadcast out to the audience, but it's for the Zoom people. So Mary Joan would like to know more about the leaf packs, if you can explain what those are.
Absolutely. So the leaf packs they emulate a natural collection of leaves that would collect at the upstream side of like a log or a rock. So for like, basically as a stream is flowing, those leaves will get stopped by a log or like a big rock that's there. And that collection of leaves then becomes a habitat for lots of these small stream critters. It can also become food for some of them as well. And so these leaf packs are put in place in order to emulate that. So what we'll do is we will put a bunch of leaves in a mesh bag. We will place them at a specific spot in the stream on the upside of a log or a log or a rock. Wow. And then we will wait like 3 to 4 weeks. Those macros will start to collect inside of the leaf pack. And then we will retrieve those macroinvertebrates. We will bring them to whatever classroom will need them. We'll have an aerator with them as well to keep them nice and safe in the transit. And then they will open up the leaf packs in the classroom. They'll look at what's inside. Maybe there's lots of sensitive organisms. Maybe there's not so sensitive organisms. They'll draw conclusions based on that. And then once they're done, we will collect those macroinvertebrates again and safely bring them back home.
Great, thank you. Okay, any questions? Right here, yes.
I have a question for Lauren. So you mentioned these lesson plans and activities that teachers are coming up with in schools that you visit. I'm wondering if there are efforts to promote resource sharing among teachers throughout the state.
I'm going to repeat the question for the people on Zoom. So are there plans for resource sharing across the state with the lesson plans? Right?
So excellent question. I have sort of two answers there. So we've worked in partnership with Subject to Climate, and a lot of us have worked with them. They're a nonprofit based in Cambridge, Massachusetts. They've got a New Jersey specific hub that you can use to search for lesson plans or even just classroom activities that are shorter things like readings and videos and stuff like that. That you can search by grade level and by content area. So a lot of folks, Audubon and Sustainable Jersey and TCNJ and the DEP and lots of other folks have contributed to that work. And like I said, there's a New Jersey specific hub that they have. So those are all specific to our state. Also, we have here at TCNJ, and I think lots of other places have too, there's a big grant that came out from the state for this year to start up what they're calling CCLCs, Climate Change Learning Collaboratives. The goal is to have 2 in each region of the state. And one of the end products of that is to collect teacher-made materials that have been sort of tried and true. I should say the stuff on the New Jersey Climate Ed Hub has all been vetted by both a scientist and a teacher. So it's got content accuracy and grade level appropriateness. So those are the kinds of materials you can pick up and use tomorrow. But we're hoping that through this future network of CCLCs that I hope we can be closely working with, we'll find out soon, that we'll be able to distribute even more resources throughout our state.
Thank you. Good to hear.
Yes, sir.
Davis, good presentation, all good presentations. Are you willing to share your lesson plans?
Our
Okay,
lesson,
question is, will Davis share his lesson plans?
our lesson plans. So our lesson plans are going to be posted on the Watershed website. Right now, we're working with a current cohort of teachers. So after that training is done, we will have lesson plans that we will share with them. How soon? So you
How
can
soon?
expect them in the springtime. The training will be done mid-March.
Can I just interject that that's sort of an ongoing process, and that was why we actually had schools sort of apply for this pilot program, and one of the requirements was that they produce some lesson plans. So we're sitting on some that we've put online yet because they weren't really public ready yet. So I think that's going to be an ongoing process. To people who are part of that network, we'll say, hey, look what we've done. And we will be a network for being able to share those.
Alex,
Question for you, Lauren. It's a two-part question. One is simple. Can students who are not in the School of Education do your minor?
oh, the question is, can students not in the School of Education take the minor that Lauren offers?
Yes, and for the second time, I'm going to call out an audience member. We have a recent graduate who completed the minor who was a public health major.
And you had a second part.
Yeah, why is TCNJ the only school doing this? What's the situation with other institutions that they haven't done this?
Why aren't other schools doing it? Alex wants to know.
I don't know, and I'm not saying that there's not good environmental ed elsewhere, but we really wanted to shape something that was for K-12 classroom teachers. And I know that was just sort of where my heart was. I think other places would happily do it, but there's a lot on our plates.
Thank you.
Grace Ann,
Oh, you're gonna end it.
yeah, we have time. We're good.
This question, first of all, really wonderful to hear all these presentations. I've been familiar with a lot of the work, but Roberta I would love to know if there is a framework similar to this gentleman's question about wanting a lesson plan for resilience in schools consortium. I had spoke to Allison about it directly and she gave me an overview, but I would love to emulate that at the shore communities without the grant funding that this provides. So if there's a framework of like things that the students are generally doing, like they're first visiting a council meeting and or visiting a certain entity or creating generally certain kinds of plans and activities, just as like a framework, if that exists somewhere, I'd love to.
It doesn't exist yet.
We're looking
sorry.
for I have to repeat it.
Yeah, I forgot.
Not every word, but so Grace Ann is looking for a framework for the resilience in school communities, school program that Roberta talked about.
Yeah, we're in year 2 and we grew from 1 school to I think 4 schools this year. So we're still growing and that is something that we're looking for funding and time for, right? Everything that we're always short on funding and time, but it's in the works.
David.
Back in the day, and I mean really back, it was required of teachers to experience an environmental education experience at school conservation.
Yes.
Which is open again, by the way. Has any thought been given to reinstate that mandate? Because it seems there's enough people around here to offer that experience besides just one location up in the woods in Sussex County.
So David is asking about back in the day when all teachers in the state pre-service were required to spend some time at the School of Conservation. And is there any thought to bringing that back?
So to my knowledge, there's not any sort of regulatory plans for that to happen. I sincerely hope it can and will happen soon. I know that whenever I talk to a teacher in a classroom who's experienced it, they remark about how incredible the experience was. But we're in a place right now where our teacher ed programs are being shuffled and reapproved and everything else. So I hope there's room to be able to add that in. All of the schools of ed in New Jersey are going through reaccreditation and reapproval. So it is my hope to continue to advocate for that to happen again.
Kim.
Thank you for everyone's presentation. This has been a wonderful experience. I have a question for Lauren. As a parent, I have a middle schooler. What is the best way to find out if this environmental subject lessons, whatnot, are being presented in the classroom? Because my 8th grader, I would expect at least in science to hear something. I have not heard anything. So I'm just wondering, what's the best way to find out if this district is implementing?
Okay, Kim wants to know as a parent, how she can find out if this is being implemented in the classroom because her son is not telling her anything about it when he comes home from school. I think that's what you said, right, Kim? Lauren.
So the rule is they have to do it, right? And I have to say, when I talk to like ed research people, the first question I get is, but is it on the test yet? Because if it's not on the test, they're not going to teach it. So like, does it have teeth, right? And though the new standards have been updated, the new tests have not. So I think there may be a period of time that things are a little wonky and not kind of catching up to where they need to be. With all that said, I heard from a Girl Scout leader in Essex County a couple years ago. I was interviewed for the Asbury Park Press, and she saw that I was talking about these climate change standards that were coming out. And she walked down to her kid's school and talked to the principal and said, "This is coming. What are we doing?" And the principal said, "I don't have any guidelines yet, so I'm not sure what to do." So she bought Harriet Sugarman's book and started carrying it around on the soccer fields and trying to get people to talk with her, and then started doing some work with through the Girl Scouts. So with all that said, that's just a little anecdote, but it's the rule, right? They're required to teach these standards. But like I said, the folks who are coming back to me are the ones who are really excited to be doing it. I have heard from teachers in many districts who were not allowed to be part of our study because their school board would not allow them to acknowledge that they were teaching about climate change. So I think a lot of that is be the pushy parent and talk to the principal or talk to the assistant superintendent for curriculum and instruction and make sure that they're meeting the legal requirements in our state.
Right? Go Girl
Mm-hmm.
Scouts. Yes.
Can you back up, say what you just said about the school districts and the Board of Ed?
So there are several school districts where teachers have expressed interest in joining our observation study. And then were told by their administrators that the Board of Ed would not approve anyone to come visit them teaching about climate change and publicly acknowledging that climate change instruction was happening in their buildings.
Yes.
Can you say generally what areas?
She wants to know where in the state
Or
that's
zip
happening.
codes.
I will happily talk to you off the record about that, but I'm not throwing anybody under the bus right now.
Wise. More questions? Okay. Oh, we got one more right back here. The question is how to get people who aren't interested in the education to understand how important it is. Is that right? Who wants to take that? Okay,
Yeah.
Roberta?
I think it comes back to place and priorities and just talking about the changes we see in things that are important to us. And I think that is the tip of the wedge to get into them. Really saying, I'm not saying that what the cause is, but you have blue sky flooding on LBI and like my mother-in-law can't get off some days, right? Because the flooding is so high. What does that mean? What do and use that point of interest and attachment and meaning as a beginning of conversation.
I'll just add, I kind of wear this shirt all the time. I mean, I have a mission-oriented life. So I'm a positive person. So I come from that context, but people in my neighborhood know what's coming out of my mouth. And I think that just, saying how you really feel is really important. And as an educator, that's what I advocate for. And these are good things because when the climate change standards came out, I saw a lot of eye rolls. And these weren't people who didn't necessarily understand climate change. You just thought, oh boy, really? And I said, yeah, really, read the news, check out what's going on. Look at our neighborhood. Look what happened to the stream. The stream came in my back door. That's never happened before. That's, so that's why I'd add. Yeah.
So it's funny. I was just talking with Grace Ann about this over lunch today. One of the teachers who came to our series of workshops, now this was mid coming back from COVID. They had been in school all day and they came 3 weeks in a row for 3 hours of workshops in the evening. We were sure that no climate change deniers were going to come and participate in these workshops. So we never even broached the subject. It wasn't even part of our discussions. This one particular teacher who rode her bike to the workshops, who was a kindergarten teacher nearby, in a focus group afterwards said to us, I came into those workshops because they were outdoors and I could do them in person. I didn't have to do more work, more Zoom professional development. That's why she chose to come. Okay, makes sense. And she said, I came in as a climate change denier, but you were nice to me and you explained things and you gave me dinner. No, honestly, as silly as it sounds, and I take that with me a lot of the time, that this is not a subject that's controversial elsewhere on earth either. Like, this is not a hugely political issue in other places. And I think when we sit across a table and share a meal with someone, we bond with them in a way that we don't otherwise. And I think, like Jeff said, if you come with kindness and positivity, and you give them helpful strategies, right? Like, here's a bunch of lessons you can use. Here's a great idea for a field trip with your students. I think when you're able to give them something that's useful, it changes everything. And she told us, I'm telling everybody who asks that climate change is real and we should be teaching about it, But also I have to say, had I known there was a denier in the midst, would I have come in with the same amount of positivity? Maybe not. So I'm not asking anymore. I'm just gonna start with niceness and be from there.
Thanks. Yes.
We've had a lot of teachers tell us, oh, no, we can't take them across the street and take a water sample from the stream because insurance won't allow it. Which is to me nuts, but that's the way we're at. You know, when I taught, the stuff I did, they put me in jail now. I'm serious. I think sometimes going to an off-site location is a better idea because they have a blanket insurance policy.
Yeah, the statement or question is about taking the students across the street from the school or leaving the property, but that sometimes has issues. Whereas maybe if it's a sanctioned class trip, is that what you mean? To some place that is insured, it's less of an issue.
I mean, I'll just chime in on this from experience at the Watershed. We've had some situations. We were working with a local school and they have a parkland right next door and there were barriers to get to this. So I just went and spoke to the principal. I said, I don't understand why there's a barrier. This is right next door. Why not just have the teachers write a blanket permission slip at the beginning of the school year to cover this? And then there was some brief discussion offline with the town. And then that became that, then they enabled that. So the schools could just not every teacher wanted to do that, by the way, but the teacher could suddenly go out to the school and do that. So I think a lot of it is somebody's got to take the lead on that. And I know that that's dollars and cents we're talking about, insurance and fear and things, but you know, they were talking about an education business and that's education.
Okay, I have a more of a question, statement from the Zoom. I'm going to read part of it. It's long. Preschoolers love projects and nature information as much, if not more, than older children. Years ago, a teacher and later children's librarian and consultant for 30 years tried to encourage young children to learn about respecting soil, conserving water, and ignoring insecticides in their personal gardens. She got permission for an after-school activity. Only one parent came with the child for a few days, then nobody came. And so the woman is doing it by herself. She's looking for speakers with a title who could be invited, I guess, looking for help or someone in an official capacity to visit the school boards to help. I guess the point is sometimes people with that title or people with some authority coming in makes a difference. And sometimes just someone from the community feels like they can't make a difference.
I'd say reach out to any of us in the app. Our contact information is there and we can discuss.
Thank you, Roberta. Anybody else? Look at us ending 1 minute early. And yes, thank you all. This was recorded, so if you missed something, you can watch it again. And our information is there. Thank you all very much. There is a little bit of a break. You don't have to run as fast to the next section. There is a little break before the next one. Thank you all.